Hey, peace and blessings to you. My name is Jerry B. I am the EntreMusician, and so are you. You're absolutely going to love the conversation that we're going to have today. I tell you what, this is a first on the EntreMusician. It's a first where we don't have a musician that we're having a conversation with. However, you know that we espouse the principles of mindset, discipline, and focus. And when it comes to leadership and talking about MDF, I could think of no better person to invite on but my newfound friend, and I mean that, my friend and my brother, Nathan Coy of Wartime Leadership.com. Now, here's the thing. Nathan takes MDF, mindset, discipline, and focus, and he just couches it in this beautiful word, resiliency. Yeah. And so when you check out his podcast, he's really talking about MDF, but the many stories of resiliency are profound. And so it is my honor to have Brother Nathan on. What's happening first non-musician on the podcast?
Now, I have to back you up there a little bit, Jerry Bear. I'm able to call you Jerry Bear, right? Is this safe space? Safe space.
Just don't call me
good.
Late for dinner.
Late for dinner. Yep. Okay. See, right there on the same target there. Yeah. I technically am a musician. I did play classical violin for about 24 years. I know. How do you think that I sat there in our pre-conversation and said A flat, B flat? I mean, I know these things.
But you were talking about another musician who was telling you that.
Well, that is true. Touche. I did play violin for about 24 years. I know I look young. I look very, very slick skinned. I am 43. So I did play for 24 years. I actually went on several European tours playing throughout Europe in high school and in college, playing classical violin as well as bass and electric bass.
All right. So we have to do the intro over. Hey, everybody, excuse what I just said. Nathan is a musician, and that how did that escape me in our conversations? I don't know. Classical violin and bass, you said.
And bass. Yep. So I know it. I don't play professionally, so it's not one of those things that I let out there into the world that I played violin. I played all these things. I actually played in a strolling strings group when I was in high school. So we had memorized all of our music and would stroll through the audience playing. I actually played the bass during that time period as well. So I actually would pick up my bass and play as I went through. And if it was a place where we were doing, plucking, I would actually pluck along as I'm carrying the bass and walking. So I just don't let it out. I don't let that cat out of the bag a whole lot. So
you kept the cat very, very quiet because I guess this would be a good time to give a shout out to Brandon David. He was the gentleman through whom I met you, and he invited me into his More Than a Mastermind, which you were already a member of. And I don't think that we've talked about the musical aspect of you being, and it doesn't matter whether or not you were famous or performed or anything. You're a musician. That's amazing.
Yeah, I still have, and I tell everybody there, I have a passion, right? I have a passion for music. I love music. I can hear all sorts of emotions that come out in music. And I really appreciate the different styles, the different genres. When I'm driving my truck, there's days I'm listening to country. There's days I'm listening to jazz. There's days I'm listening to Christian music. Like, it doesn't matter. I can hear the passion. I understand what it means. And that's what it means to me. I am a fan of music. I don't necessarily play anymore, but I still understand the science behind it, the feeling that is impacted by it, which is really where, in connecting with you, I get a greater understanding of what that looks like in somebody who is trying to come back into it and having that resilience to really have it in their own ability to be able to do that, to come back from the people saying no, or the people trying to say, you're not good enough, to now performing in this capacity.
That's absolutely amazing. And I almost want to start all over again, online because I know that you have the passion for it. but I did not understand the degree because we talked to other musicians who were absolutely on that particular call, but I did not know to the degree that you understood it. Because if you're playing classical violin, then you're definitely getting into some passion zones with
Oh,
with respect to that. Now, let me ask you this though: did you ever compose any music?
maybe when I was in fourth and fifth grade, learning how to play, and I didn't understand what I was playing, and messed up, and then I would call it composure. But I actually wrote a lot more poetry when I was younger, and coming through high school, college, and the beginning of my career. So in that way, I did compose because poetry is just music of the word in a completely different sense. As far as writing my own stuff, no, but I do have the pleasure of listening to my son when he is composing different beats and different things when he's playing drums. So I get to live vicariously through him.
It's absolutely correct. What about your beautiful wife? Is she musically inclined?
I hope to say that she will never hear this, but no, not at all. Like there is absolutely no musical inclination, and she's okay with me saying that because it's true. Yeah, but just like me, she has a passion. So we are a Christian family, and we worship in that way, and we understand praise music and the power that it brings for creating an atmosphere of who God is to us. And in that way, she it doesn't matter, and it's the same way that we've taught our son who can't sing either really at all. It doesn't matter because who you're singing to, who you're creating that music with your body for, is the one that you're singing to in that moment. It doesn't matter what the people around you think. It doesn't matter what they say. That's a moment between you and them, and it's creating that atmosphere.
Absolutely agree. 100%. Audience of one. It's for his
Absolutely.
glory and for his praise, without fail. Because I don't consider myself to be a singer, but I will make a joyful noise anytime.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool. But so now that's going to change really the trajectory, because I can really talk about music with you from that perspective. But I was all set to talk about leadership and resiliency and mindset, discipline, and focus. Because first of all, God bless you, you've served our wonderful country for 18 plus years in the
Mm-hmm.
United States Air Force. So thank you for serving. And I would want to say that that's a first, but then I would have to go back through the episodes and say maybe there were some other people who served our country as well. But with respect to your service in the Air Force, your leadership skills were really honed, and you do lead people not vicariously but wonderfully through um, times of resiliency and other factors that you've parlayed off and made a wonderful podcast out of. Can you tell
Mm-hmm.
me from your experiences and I don't know what your rank is, I apologize, but uh, in your rank as a United States Air Force person, how that parlayed into Wartime Leadership Podcast?
Well, I'm going to tell you
I hope I'm
straight up.
asking that question
Oh,
correct.
no, I get what you're saying, brother. It and let me just say this. Rank doesn't really matter.
Okay.
Rank doesn't matter. And I teach that on a daily basis. Rank doesn't really matter when it comes to responsibility. So I may have a lower rank, but if my responsibility in what I'm needing to, or what I am tasked with in the mission, is more important at that point. So I mean, I have served under several commanders that have just taken a back seat to what's happening in that moment, because they understand that those are my subject matter experts, and so I am going to let them go and do as they are trained to be able to do. They're not often trained in that way, and the people that I serve with, I say I serve them because I don't think of myself as being in charge of them, but rather that I work for them to ensure that they're empowered, that they're equipped, and that they have every single tool that they need necessary in order to do their job. Because that's my job as a leader, is to be able to ensure that they have all of those items readily available for them to execute said mission. Uh, so I have been in for almost 19 years now, and over the course of my career, I've served as a what is an air transportation specialist. So that's anyone that puts cargo, passengers, special handling cargo, coordinating the coordination of the ramp. Making sure that each aircraft has what they need. Um, I've served in that capacity for a majority of the time, as well as done some back office type jobs as well. I have had the pleasure of serving some pretty high name individuals in that career. I won't get too much into that until after I retire and whatnot, and start talking about those things. But I have also had the pleasure of serving as a military training instructor. Most people know them as drill instructors. So, how did this nice guy, like before I went there, Jerry, I was very timid. I was very held back and frankly, I was a pushover. People could just kind of, do that as long as they were doing their job. I didn't really get into the weeds. Let them do what they do. Oh, well, that was actually after I came into the military. I came in at the age of 24, and I was just kind of like, hey, I'm just here to do 4 years, get out and call it good. And then here I am 19 years later, and I'm like, well, I'm still in it just for 4 years. Not really. It really opened up into, I understand. I came in 2004 when the economy was bad. Things were just, two failed businesses, barbecue restaurants kind of went under, other things like that. And I was really looking for purpose. I had lost complete purpose of my life. I had been in college. I had done the college thing. I had done the business thing, and I wasn't fulfilled. And I was running away from my faith in a lot of ways because I was just trying to do things on my own and to get away. Uh, you know, Doing drugs, doing other aspects that were just I didn't know at the time. Ruining my life. I was running away from responsibility. And so, what do I do when I run away from responsibility? I head to a military organization that was ready to take me in and give me the discipline that I needed in the moment. And that's
Apex though, tell me that. Are you doing a self-evaluation and then just decide this is what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the Air Force, or was there some external guidance that says this is what you need to do, Nate?
my brother. My brother was in. He was actually just coming out of the Air Force as I was going in, and I saw kind of how it worked on his life and what it did to him. My father had served previously to that. He was actually during Vietnam. He served 2 years straight in Vietnam. And then my grandfather, my step grandfather, even before him, was in the Army Air Corps and then transitioned into the Air Force. So there's that family history of it. At the same time, I'm also not wanting to do many of the things that my family had done. So so there was external, there was internal strife, there was a lot of stuff going on, and I really just needed to get my feet back underneath me. I wasn't looking to get married. I wasn't looking, for settling down in any way. um, and I just needed something to take me over the finish line, to actually not even over the finish line, but rather to push me beyond the start line, and to move in that direction. So as I went through my career, I just didn't really care to really influence people. I mean, I started to learn that what I was doing was affecting people. And it was that first time that I got deployed when it kind of clicked for me. Like I was a lazy worker. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to do certain things. I didn't like being told what to do. Weird, because I'm in the military and I still don't like to have things, told to me to do. My product was not very good, and because I didn't see the downline effects of what it was. So when I got deployed for the first time, I get out to the deployed location I was at. The door opens up on the airplane, and it's like in the movies where you see this, like, this kind of, air kind of floating through, and you're like, oh, that's got to be really, really hot air. It's 135-degree air, and it just smacks me right in the face, and I'm like, oh crap, this is real. This is gonna happen. uh yeah, exactly. 135 degrees, middle of the day, just it doesn't get below 90. It is a horrible environment to try to operate in and to be able to move around. And the first thing they make me do is they make me walk the yard and do all of the, here's the cargo that needs to be fixed, here's the pallets, here's where they're located at. Well, at this time it was the hub for everything that was going into and out of theater. So, I mean, the cargo yard was huge. And I have to walk all the way to this far corner that, it takes me an hour and a half to do this grid inventory. And I am just soaking from head to toe when I come back in. But they're like, hey, you forgot some of the cargo that's in the bad cargo area. We need you to go there and check that cargo and just get information on it. So I'm like, man, these guys are ruthless. Like, what are they doing to me? And so I take and I go over there, and I'm glad that they did, because I look at these pallets that are coming off, and pallets are just large, metal cookie sheets basically filled with cargo all the way up with nets on them. And I'm looking at it, and I mean, it's leaning sideways, like it's leaning like this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, who in the world? And I'm looking down the line, and everything, I mean, just so many pieces of cargo are just screwed up. And I'm like, who in the world would go through all this trouble to put this stuff onto a pallet and send it halfway across the world for me to have to fix in 135-degree weather? And there's a placard on the thing, right? It tells you where it's from, where it's going, and who signed off on it. And I look down, I'm like, who in the world is Airman First Class Cole? Oh boy, that's me. It was my product. It was my dereliction of taking the job seriously. It was my dereliction that was putting these people that was in 135-degree weather having to fix all of these problems, instead of just taking it off, putting it onto the ground, and then putting it back onto a plane to send somewhere else. They were having to take the time in this weather and spend hours upon hours fixing my mistakes because my quality wasn't there. And it was at that moment when it snapped. And I went, oh my goodness, my actions affect all the way down this chain of command. And everybody along that way is affected, not just me and my not wanting to be there. And it changed something in me. It actually made me start to care about the product that I was producing. But it also made me care about the airmen a little bit more, to go, okay, I need to instill in them, even at the same rank as them, the importance of what this looks like. Why is it important to be equipped with the correct tools? Why is it important to ensure that your vehicles are fully fueled, that the engines are taken care of? Why is it important that you're educated about what this looks like? And so it just created this deal down the line. Now, eventually I got to the point again where I was like, okay, people are going to come up with ideas, and I'm just going to push them down the line, and we're good to go. It happens, right? You get to a location, or you get to a stationing, and things are working so well, you just don't want to change them, and it is what it is. Yeah, and that's what I had in my toolbox. And then all of a sudden I get this email. My wife and I had been talking about different jobs I would never want to do in the military. Just absolutely would never want to be a tech school instructor, go and teach new kids how to do the job. I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to be a drill instructor, military training instructor. Wouldn't want to do that. There's all these jobs. I was like, I'm being put in for these. They're called developmental special duties. And I was like, I don't want to do these. Honor guard, just whatever. And then I get this email, April 1st. I remember it was April 1st. And I was like, congratulations, you have been nominated and selected for military training instructor. And I was like, oh, this is good. This is real good. This is the best April Fool's joke I have ever seen in my life. April 1st of 2014. It's telling me that I'm going to go be a drill instructor. Yeah, this is good. I went up to the chief and I was like, hey, chief, look at this. This is funny. I said, it looks so real with that heading and stuff. And he goes, oh, you got selected. And I was like, what? So I had to make that telephone call to my wife and go, hey, babe, you know how I talked about this? And that was the best decision made for me that in my entire career, because I gained so many friends from that job. I gained so many different types of tools that I could utilize. In the beginning, as with many of us, we go, this is a horrible idea. Like, why am I being put in? Why must I go do this? And then at the end, you're like, man, that was such a great learning tool. Uh,
Absolutely.
and I went there and I thrived at that job. I really did. I was very timid at first about yelling, and I didn't want to get in there and get engaged. And there's the knife hands. Da, 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 da. But it taught me. And I know I'm going on for a while with this one question,
I understand. I understand. Yeah.
but it took me to a place I needed to be. Uh, Leadership is not all about fun and games. Leadership is not all about just making the right decisions. It's not about a lot of different aspects, but rather sometimes it's about doing something that you don't want to do
True.
in order to learn from it, to grow from it. As long as you learn and grow, my leadership philosophy has been modified since my time there. I found that I was really strict. I was what they referred to as an old hat. I was very loud. I was very boisterous. I did things the same way, and I started to modify what that looked like. I showed genuine care for my airmen. Now the first 2 weeks, I don't care who you are, right? Like, I'm going to yell at you regardless. You didn't do things the way I want them done. You're going to hear about it. I'm going to show you that you didn't do it right, and I'm going to yell at you. But what they didn't understand until the later weeks was I wasn't yelling at them to yell at them. When I yelled at them for not doing what I wanted them to do, I was yelling at everybody else so that everybody else in that bay could hear me ripping into you about this thing. Because guess how many of the 62 fixed that one thing before I got to them? All of them. All of them fixed that one thing. I'm not yelling at them to get them, but you got to bring everybody down to a lower level, to where they're on kind of an equal working plane, before you start to build them back up. Because you've got 18-year-olds, 19, 20, all the way up to 24-year-olds that are coming in with their way of doing things. And I need them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you flatten it out. You get them all on the same plane, because I need you to do things the way the Air Force wants you to do them. Not the way that mommy did it for you, not the way that your wife has done it for you, but rather I need it to be. And that's like, I have 17-year-olds and I've got 24-year-olds that have been married for 4 or 5 years. There's a wide gap there in knowledge. And I need them to start to teach one another. I need them to invest in one another. And even on my second flight, I had an airman, and I'm not going to say his name. I'll say Airman Jones. Airman Jones was quiet. He was reserved. He didn't invest in the flight at all. And the flight saw that as, okay, well, he's not helping. He's not talking. We're cutting him out. Like he's not going to be involved. And he was starting to fail inspections in the fourth week. He was failing inspections. And I'm like, why is no one coming around him? And they're like, we don't know who he is. So I'm like, I'm getting mad. I'm like, everyone get into the day room. Get into the day room. Day room is that centralized room where I can take off my hat, put it onto the chair, and I can sit down and actually like start talking to them. So it was the first time I was going to actually sit down and engage with them without yelling, without talking loud. And I got them in there, and I said, you all need to understand who each other are and where each person is coming from, because you don't know who each other are. You don't know why you're fighting for one another. You don't know any of this stuff. All you know is that you're just trying to get through basic. Like, that's it. You need to invest in one another. You need to impart into each other who and your why. I said, Airman Jones or Trainee Jones, get up here. Like nobody knows who you are. Like, where are you even from? And he started to say, Detroit. I was like, tell me why you're here. Tell everyone else. I want you to turn around and I want you to talk to everyone else and tell them why you're here. And he started into the story, Derry, that to this day, like it affects my wife too. Like, she wanted to bring him home and like hug on him and stuff. I was like, you can't do that. Uh, this kid had joined the military, at 17 years old. The reason he joined was because a judge told him he had to, because it was the only way he could adopt his younger brother and his younger sister. See, Jones came from a household where it was a single mother who was an intravenous drug user. He was used to taking the drugs, the needles out of her breast when she would pass out or when she would go into that state that she would. And he got so used to doing this, it was affecting his brother and sister. His brother, literally the day before he left for basic, he took a gun out of his little 9-year-old brother's mouth. 9-year-old. Took it out and locked it up and kept it away. And I didn't even know this. His little sister was 6. He was going into this organization to be able to gain custody of his brother and sister. I mean, I'm over here like I'm tearing up and I'm listening to the story. If I had known this, like I would have been able to allow him to go and make telephone calls. I immediately let him go downstairs after he was done talking and call his brother and sister just to make sure that and to do check-ins with them because it was important. And this was me softening my heart and not being that guy, but rather being able to show them this is who you need to be. But in that moment, they learned the law of connectiveness, right? They learned how to connect. I said, you cannot truly fight for one another until you know where each other are from, where you've gone, what you've been through. It's so vitally important, even in organizations, Jer. Even in organizations, relationship is key. See, healing happens in the context of relationship. Whether it's a direct correlation, like a direct relationship between you and one other person, even if it's a moment in passing, there's a relationship element there. You have to invest in those times. You have to invest in those moments. So I don't know your listeners, right? But I know you. I have a relationship with you. I can connect with you and vicariously connect with them in that way. Connectedness is huge. And I can't tell you how to care, Jer. I can't teach you how to care. I tell my students this even now, sitting as the in the current job that I have. I can't teach you to care, but I can show you through the actions day in and day out of how I treat my staff, of how I treat the people, quote, below me, the people that I'm working for. I can show you how to care. It just takes a second to care enough.
That's all it takes. That's an incredible story that you've allowed us to walk into. Now, is that or stories like that the reason why you put the podcast together? Because it's an amazing podcast with so many diverse people, but that core of resiliency is in there. Tell me what the impetus was to develop that. Was it the stories of the Airman Jones that you kept hearing and being around?
You know, I needed them just to believe in something, right? And so in the military, in even with wartime leadership, we teach the 4 core pillars of what make up us, right? You have your social pillar, you have your spirit, you have your social pillar, you have your emotional pillar, you have your physical pillar, and all 3 of those are easily defined. Go talk to somebody, have a relationship with somebody, invest in them, go for a run. There's your physical. Go for a run. Make sure that you're working out daily. Make sure all these things. We have ways of telling people how they do this, but when it comes to the spiritual pillar, we just say you need to be spiritually resilient. What does that even mean? What does it mean to be spiritually resilient? We don't talk about it because we're afraid of the conversation. We're afraid that it's the third rail of a subway system, and if we grab a hold of it, we're going to be shocked to death, right? Like you can't say the right thing because if somebody doesn't believe the same way as you know, then where are we going to have this conversation? And that birthed the Wartime Leadership Podcast, the Wartime Leadership Podcast, where we explore what spiritual resiliency looks like in the lives of our guests, who are people from all different walks of life. And that's the way I go about it. It's a conversation. It's not me trying to tell you how you're going to be spiritually resilient. It's me giving you examples living out through other people's lives. I've had agnostics on. I've had atheists on. My producer, actually, he is atheist. Yeah, I've had Catholic, former Catholic priests. I've had Christians. I've had people who have no spiritual affiliation but know that there's something out there. But they have different ways of working through and defining spiritual resilience. And that's all it is opening up that conversation. I could tell them all day long, here's what I believe. But what good is that going to do? We need to have that conversation. See, Christ was a huge proponent of this. Jesus was a huge proponent of this. He had conversations with people. I think that we have perverted what that looked like, and we try to make it into, well, Christians are this, they're angry, they're dismissive of who I am, they don't like me, they won't welcome me into their environment. No, 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 no. Yes, there are people who pose like that. But instead, Jesus decided to have conversations with people. Zacchaeus, come down. I'm going to come to your house and dine. Oh my goodness. Even the spiritual leaders, hey, I just want to talk. Let's sit down. Let's have a conversation. I come into your place of worship, and I speak on behalf of who Christ is. It's it's the conversation, and it creates things for people to know. I had one guest on that she went for a run to be able to connect to her son who had passed away, because they used to go on runs together. So she goes on runs and she sees the sky being painted with the purples and the reds and the blues, and it makes her have a sense of happiness to connect in that way. I've got the Jeff Constance who lost his son to an overdose of fentanyl, and then shortly thereafter lost his wife as well due to suicide. I mean, there's and he was a functioning alcoholic. He's an agnostic, right? And so he decided that he was going to put together a nationwide tour where he was going to travel and hit every single state in the continental United States to have a mental health conversation. He funded it. He owns one of the largest hedge funds in Iowa, or the finance, where he uses people's finances and reinvests. I guess that's a hedge fund. I don't know. I'm not smart on that type of stuff. But he was a functioning alcoholic doing all this stuff. So he decided that he quit drinking. Just one day made the decision, I'm going to quit drinking and I'm going to go on this nationwide tour. And he funded it all by himself, paid for an RV, had it wrapped with the name of the tour on the side of it, and coordinated all these different conversations with people all across, just because he needed people to understand where his pain was coming from and to help them get through situations themselves. I've had talks with major generals. I've had chiefs from the Air Force, enlisted leaders from every branch. I've had industry leaders, that just want to have a talk and say, here's what I do to be spiritually resilient. And one of the questions I ask is, define for us how you define spiritual resilience. I don't put the words in their mouth. I don't do anything like that. I just want to have that conversation with them, because that's what it's supposed to be, an investment. You investing into me, and at the end, throughout the time, I'm going to invest in you.
That's right. That's right. That's absolutely well. I really appreciate and enjoy the podcast, and I was wondering where the foundation came from. I thought literally, um, just from your time in, the 18 years that you spent in the Air Force, but I thought it might have been your own personal experience, because I'm interested too in the Nathan that was out there a little bit, because a lot of times we see, we just see this picture of you, we just see your accomplishments, we see your wonderful family, we see, but the person who was there before Nathan could preach a louder sermon than this one, because if God can do this for me, because this is where I was, then look at what he can do for you. So do you mind just sharing 30 seconds, a minute and a half, whatever you have to give, to say, okay, this is the night and day of it for me. And I'm bringing you back to the podcast, if any of that, Nathan, is the impetus of why this show is so wonderful, because it really is a great podcast. I mean that.
I appreciate it. So I don't know if we can see that, those little marks. Okay. So that was the beginning of it. That was the beginning of not being resilient. That was the beginning of living a life of pain, of agony, of defeat, of self-hatred, of self-deprivation, where I'm going to crack jokes that are against myself and not against somebody else. And if they are against somebody else, it's because I don't like myself and I don't like where I'm at. For the longest time, I asked for a testimony because I felt that I didn't have a testimony. I didn't have anything to speak about. I didn't have a word uh, to define what I had been through in life. I didn't know what that looked like. And and this was a culmination of a lot of really, really bad decisions in a quick moment, right? Praise God that it didn't nothing came from it, right? And there was a lot of mental healing that had to happen as well. Uh, but that all changed when my wife and I adopted our son. Now this was many, 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 many years before I even joined the military, right? This was a long time before. And then we adopted our son many, many, many years into my military career. But it proved a point, Jer. I don't have to be the center of my testimony. I can be the center and the assistance and aid in pursuing somebody else's testimony. And that's kind of where wartime leadership came, was helping to equip people for the idea of resilience. So I'm getting Maxwell certified, Maxwell team, Maxwell leadership team certified. I am resiliency, a resilience professional resiliency trainer. I am gaining these tools to help equip people with resilience to be able to get through those times. And that's why I love, your show so much. If you listen to the stories and the mission that you have chosen, nay, that you've been placed on to go through, you have individuals that are later in life and still have something to give, and they're just trying to find ways to be able to get educated on technology, to get educated on NFTs, Web3, and what it looks like to be able to do this now, a passion that they have. You can't teach the passion that these people have in music. You cannot teach that.
I agree.
That you can teach the skills to help get it out there to the world and to make it sound the way in which they hear it in their heart.
Right.
But these are individuals that have been told no a lot, no, or not good enough. I am a yes, but how? Yeah, or too old. Like, no, no. I look at the Rolling Stones and go, look, they're still up on stage. There is no such thing as too old. You're not starting over. You're starting from where you left off. All you have to do is pick yourself up, dust off, and move forward. And that has become the center of my leadership philosophy. So
So
yeah,
I,
yeah.
and maybe I couldn't get the words out right when I was asking the question, but I know exactly what you mean, because I preach to the old Jerry all the time. Not just not because he's not dead. He's dead. He's gone. I'm a new man in Christ, for sure. But the thing about it is I remember from where God brought me from, and it's like, okay, well, we're doing this, but this again, wartime leadership or the EntreMusician, this is what people see, and they don't see the story, they don't see the impetus behind it.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
I knew that there was more from your podcast, because I hear it without you even saying it. I hear it through the stories of your guests. I hear it through their experiences. And by you saying your testimony, you not being the center, Nathan, of the
mm-hmm.
testimony, but helping to facilitate. Man, that's That's
And
hardcore, bro.
it's important, because sometimes people just need to be facilitated through their own testimony to help figure it out, to see what it is. To be able to come alongside people, once a week, every Tuesday, a new episode drops, to be able to come alongside each of those people and to be able to facilitate that conversation so that they can see, that's important, because I had someone good in my life that did that. Like I finally came back to God, right? Like I came running back to daddy because I had hit, rock bottom at that point. I met my wife, like haphazardly met my wife. Somebody I was like, God, how are you going to give me a wife when I'm on the island of Guam? At that time, I had moved to Guam, which is 28 miles by 8 miles. And God said, "Oh yeah, well watch this." And he took me to Saipan, which is half the size of Guam, and that's where I met my wife, who was a Christian. And in her culture, in the Filipino culture, like a lot of people are Catholic, and my wife was not. She was actually Assembly of God, and I had been Assembly of God at the time. And it just, it was kind of God's way of saying ha 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 ha. and and in a lot of those moments in scripture where we see pain, hurt, agony, defeat, the worst thing that could possibly happen, there's always a comma, and that comma is a decision point. And there's usually two words right after that comma: but God. So in my agony, in my hurt, in my defeat, but God didn't keep me there. But God helped me through. But God helped me. There's a lot in my life that happened in that, before that comma. And then after the comma, but God showed who he was. And that's who you see now. This is the person that you see now. That love, that care, that deep passion for people, to help, wanting to get them to the other side, to be able to help them through in a resilient manner, to help them through with leadership skill sets that they can, not only take from corporate but to their personal life. That's a huge aspect of who you see now. Before, not a lot of smiles that were real.
Wow. Well, let me ask you this question, because our core is mindset, discipline, and focus. And again, I think you couch it well with resiliency. But when you hear those three words, what do you hear? What is your visualization when you mindset, discipline, focus? What do those three
Uh-uh.
words emanate from you?
Mindset, discipline, focus. Three things that I was missing prior to military. I didn't have the right mindset. I was not focused on any, or I didn't have the right mindset. I didn't think about what could I do for the world? What could I do for people? But rather I had the mindset of internal focus. Why is the world not providing me? Why are the people in my life not pouring into me and yet expecting a lot out of me? uh, Discipline to be able to clean my, Admiral McGraven had a wonderful conversation about discipline, waking up and doing the small things right every single morning and not having to focus on moving on to the bigger tasks of life. I didn't have the discipline necessary. Even during that beginning portion of my career, I didn't have the discipline to produce a good product. I didn't have the discipline of myself, but I expected the discipline of my subordinates. How can you expect from someone else that which you do not give yourself? And so learning how to take that discipline and internalize it, and to hold myself accountable to my team. And so when I do something wrong, I tell my team, I don't know the answer. I Guess what? Surprisingly enough, I don't know everything. My wife reminds me daily of that, but I have learned it myself in my own way.
But I think
Uh,
admitting it is helpful, because it shows your vulnerability and your trustworthiness. That when you
mhm.
act like you know it all, then people tend to stand away from you. But when you say,
Mhm.
I don't know this, what do you think? How can we help this? How can we do this together? It really builds, especially in a
Yeah.
team environment.
Well, and the cool thing is I've got my son here in the room with me, and he's, he looked over at me like, "You don't know everything?" No, I don't know everything. But if I expect it from him, I should first expect it from myself. He should first expect it from me and emulate what he is being seen, because now that we have focused in on the problem, see what I did there?
I
Nice
got you, man.
transition from discipline to
Yeah,
focus.
nice job.
Now I can focus in on what it is, because for several years I was out of focus. I was like that, I was like a 1980s Polaroid versus the Sony cameras of today, right? Like it's night and day difference. That there's not the detail. You can't see the different aspects of what people are going through. Now I look for those details. I like to be able to connect with what they're going through. Empathy, not apathy, right? Empathy, being able to understand. I have a big deal, and my focus has really driven and changed in this way. I now look at people, and instead of going, "Oh yeah, I know what you're going through," I don't know what everyone goes through. I don't know what a pregnant woman is going through when she comes to our office to go to the class. I don't understand that because I've never had a baby, right? So I focus on, listen, I don't know where you've been. And even in life situations, I don't know where you've been, but I want to understand. Talk to me. Give me that feedback. And I focus on what they need from me and not what I can get out of them.
Beautiful. It's beautiful, man. Absolutely. Now, you've watched enough, absorbed enough of the Entre Musician podcast where you know that people like yourselves who have multiple interviews, that there's generally a question that someone asks and you've prepared yourself accordingly. But I haven't asked that question because I'm not smart enough or because I didn't do enough homework on wartime leadership. So, what is that answer to the question that I haven't asked you? Something that you know our listeners and those who are viewing should know about you, your experience, about themselves as you talk about resiliency or leadership. And I haven't asked it.
I was so ready to answer this, Jerry. I really was. And then you asked it. um, here's resiliency begins where you can't. Resiliency begins in the past, because what you have been through and what you have experienced drive the ability to get through things. It doesn't matter if it's spiritual, physical, emotional, social. It doesn't matter if it's any of those. Any one pillar goes down and the whole system falls. We as humans will fall with that system. But the strengthening of that begins in the past with the old wounds that we've been through, because as you've gone through, you've needed to fix those. You've needed to be able to do the patchwork to fill in the gaps, to fill in the cracks of life. Those happen for a reason, because as you go through, you realize that those spots get tougher, tougher, more stable, more secure, and you don't always have the answers. But you've been through experiences in life, you've been through things that have happened where now your testimony is louder than ever before, because resilience has gotten you through. But as you pour out that cup, as you go through situations, as you experience things, as you jot them down in a journal, if you're not filling this up, if you're not continuing to invest in yourself, that will just continue to drain throughout and over time. You have to fill that in. You can't give out what you haven't already taken in for yourself. And so as you continue to move forward with your music, as your music continues to develop over time, as you're finding new opportunities, new ways of reinventing yourself or repurposing your music of your life. That is just it. It is your life. It is your music. It is your testimony. Use it in a way that it helps you to help someone else, because music is not about, helping just you. Yes, it's an avenue of healing, but I'll give you a quick brief story. My son and I were driving, one of the first times that we had been driving, and a song came on the radio, and it's really the first time that he said something. It was the artist was talking about going through, a life situation where they were ripped out of their home, where their mother had, all these different things. And it was one of the first times that he looked over at me and he says, "Yeah, I know what he's going through." Well, here we go. We're pulling over the truck and we're going to have a conversation, because it opened up because of the words that somebody else had experienced years prior that helped transition into a new stage of confidence in conversation. Your words are not your own. Your words are there for you, but to help someone else going through that moment. And in that moment, my son and I had made a connection because of somebody else's song, that if they hadn't sung it, if they hadn't rapped it, we wouldn't have been having that conversation. And I don't know how long it would have gone to be able to have that combo. And that's absolutely amazing. You hold that power with your story. Don't quit. Do not hold back. Start from where you left off the first time. You're not starting over, folks. You're starting from where you left off one time before. Resilience is the ability to get through and to navigate through that. And that's where I like to be able to come along and help. I don't know a whole lot about music industry. I don't know a whole lot about recording the songs and whatnot, but I understand about helping people through some of those life situations that you've experienced, and to get to the other side in creating that story. I'm not going to be a no person, although there is always a hard no. If a no is, say no. If it's a yes, say yes. But there's a yes, but how?
But how?
That, Jerry, is what I would say.
You said it extremely well. You said it better than I did. And so I'm just going to keep, I'm going to clip that and keep using it, somewhere down the line as needed. But I am so grateful, man, that you spent your valuable time with us. I'm grateful to your son. Tell me your son's name again, please.
Stanley.
Stanley.
Stan the man.
That Stan, wanted to give up his father's time for an hour to share with us on the EntreMusicians. So tell him I said thank you. Tell your beautiful wife I said thank you. And I know this won't be the last conversation that we will have, not only here on the EntreMusician, but otherwise, as we are involved in MTM. We'll give a heads up to Brandon again and Claudia, and what a wonderful group of people, Royal and William T. Broussard, and all of you guys. I mean, you really impact us, and I look forward to Thursday night. So thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being my brother. And thank you for being the leader that you are. Leadership coach, mentor, trainer, soon to be author. We're just going to call that out. And leader of the Wartime Leadership Podcast. Go to wartimeleadership.com and learn more and see how you fit in. I love you, man. I just want to tell you that, man. You are a good brother. Thank you for your soul and for your heart.
I love you too, Jerry. I really do.
Absolutely. Well, blessings to you. And, that's it. That's going to do it for this episode of the EntreMusician. Again, Nathan Coy. Go to wartime-leadership.com. Avail yourself to the wonderful community that they're developing there, as well as the podcast. And make sure while you're on your way to Wartime Leadership that you pick up my best-selling book, The Path of the EntreMusician, 9 Keys to Unlock Your Mindset, Discipline, and Focus. Tell everybody you know and 10 people you don't about this podcast. Go to theentremusician.com. Kick it with us. Hang out. You're going to enjoy yourself, and you're going to learn a lot too. My name is Jerry B. I am the EntreMusician, but you know what's most important? So are you. We will definitely see you next time. God bless.